Cool. Hi, Doctor. We're going live here. I'll see you in a second.
Okay. Good. You're live.
Oh, good. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to the show. I've got Dr. Jonathan Gluckman with me today, and this is going to be an exciting conversation. We're going to talk about sixth wave innovations, and we're going to try to keep this a bit simple as if we can. I know your company has like 6 PhDs on it, but you do have a great talent for being able to break things down, at least for me to understand. And we're going to talk about different business divisions within your company and the use of molecularly imprinted polymers. Don't get scared, people. It's very cool, whether it's for fertilizers or whether it's for absorbents or sorbents in order to extract or purify things. So that might sound a little bit intense for people, and you could probably give it a much better, clearer definition, but it's very exciting and it's certainly cutting edge, and there's plenty of companies out here working on similar types of things, and and I was really excited about the technology that you guys have.
Well, thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it. Yeah, if you want, I'll be happy to jump in and give a quick kind of layman's description for what a MIP is.
Yes.
Okay. So I like to think about taking a soft piece of clay and pushing my thumb into the clay and pulling it out. And when you do that, you created a physical imprint of your thumb, say, in the clay. And that imprint has some unique characteristics in terms of the size of the imprint, the shape of the imprint, and even specific things that identify you, like your fingerprint. Well, almost all molecules in nature have the same kind of characteristics. They have a three-dimensional size and shape, and then they have some kind of electrical or electrochemical charge on them. So you can think about them like magnets. So some molecules are negative magnets and some molecules are positive magnets. Well, what we do is we design polymers to go and capture target molecules, whether they're viruses or bacteria or they're amines or they're biomarkers in the blood or they're metals in the mining industry. We do the same thing. We create that three-dimensional imprint in our polymer. We create a complementary charge, right? Negatives attract. So if we've got a negative molecule over here, then we'll put a positive charge on our polymer. And that way there's a reason for the molecule to find its way into the hole. And when we do that, we're very efficient then about collecting only the molecules that we're looking for. So if you think about that from a diagnostic test, it means I'm only getting the right virus and I'm not giving you false alarms. When we think about it in mining, it means I'm only giving the miner the gold and silver that he wants and not all of the base metals that he doesn't want or other confusing molecules. And so we're very efficient. We're very specific, and we can get detection levels and purity levels that are unrivaled by existing technology.
So this, I mean, if someone kind of gets their head wrapped around, they go, okay, this is really cool because this is like a nanotech play where it's like a lattice. This, I won't even say it's minuscule, it's nano, but is able to attach and bind itself, and like a little computer, it just attaches itself, it pulls it out, and specifically tailors to what it's looking for. This, like you said, this is huge for a lot of different sectors and industries. Right. Do you think some of the problems that people have is that it's pretty intensely technology that they may not get their head wrapped around? Like, really, can we do this? Like, why? Like, what the uptake of this? What do you think some of the things that are holding people back, or do they not realize that we're this far ahead with a lot of this technology? What are some of the challenges you're facing with that?
Yeah, so nanotechnology is still relatively new, and there are fewer kinds of. Oh, that's a nice picture of how molecular prints work. So nanotechnology is kind of new, and large-scale manufacturable, examples of it and companies built on it are even newer. Fortunately, we've been successful in this. We successfully developed a molecular imprinted polymer that would detect explosives, for example. We commercialized that and sold that to the United States military. It was used heavily in Iraq and Afghanistan for identifying IEDs. Of course, the world, changed. That war was over, and there wasn't as much of a need for that product anymore. And so we converted and moved into the mining space, which is still currently our main focus. Why? Because we can make more money for the gold mine. We can make more money for the miner because it's less expensive to build a plant. It's less expensive to operate a plant. It uses less electricity. It's more efficient. And overall, what that means is that a gold mine could save as much as $100, $150 per ounce of gold that they're mining all the time. Our take on it, we get net about $15 to $20 for every ounce of gold that a gold mine mines. So for us, it's a phenomenal recurring revenue because we're selling our product in there or we're leasing it to them, and it's a replaceable. It is a consumable. It has a long shelf life and it has a long usage life, but it is still a consumable, and so there are recurring revenues from that. We did the same thing in the cannabis industry. So we were able to now do purifications that are 10% better in purity than any other technology that's out there. We can do it as a continuous operation. We don't have loss of product through the process. So we're getting, for every kilo of a distillate, for example, that a licensed producer is making, we're going to give them a couple, probably on the order of 200 to 250 grams of more material for the same plant matter. Well, at $10 to $25 per gram at the wholesale level, that's thousands of dollars for every kilo that they're producing in additional revenue to them. And again, it's a recurring revenue model for us. So because this is a leased equipment, so hey, for us, we're making a little bit of money, but we're giving our customers way better process that they can make much more money in addition than we are. And so for these reasons, it works.
Yes. Now, you mentioned, okay, you've done some work with the U.S. Government. There's a military application here for detection of explosive. That's huge in and of itself.
Yeah.
And the viruses and say with weed or cannabis, I mean, we'll get into that because I wanted to, because you talked about the gold one and you just had a news release where with Magnus Mineral Resources, you've signed a $50 million plus contract for implementation of this one product, because you've got 3 product lines, I believe, and this is the XIOS mining technology.
Right. So our most complete product in the mining industry is for gold and silver sequestration. So as maybe some of your viewers know, most mining isn't done with, like they do it on TV. They're trying to get a microscopic amount of gold out of tons of rock. And to do that, they use a process where they douse the rock with a cyanide solution. And what that does is it takes all of the metals out of the ground and it puts them into this liquid cyanide solution. So you have metal complexes with cyanide in the ion form. That's perfect because I can create an imprint for those ions. And so that's what we did. And so what we get with that is we get a much higher purity of gold in the doré that the miner is going to get. And we've reduced their costs of that mining significantly. And we've increased their yield as well, because what's currently used is activated carbon, right? It's like large pieces of pencil lead, right? So if you rub it against your fingers, just like charcoal, you see that it's frangible and it makes little dust particles. Well, when you're using activated carbon in gold mining to collect the gold, it creates the same dust particles. It's just that those dust particles also collect gold and they disappear into tailings, and so they're not recoverable. So we get rid of some of those aspects of the mining problem as well. Oh, another great little slide. I've seen this one before. So we get major advantages. Also, we can do it with a smaller plant size because our elution process, or the process of getting the gold off of the adsorbent, off of our Ixos adsorbent and back to solid gold, is much faster and simpler than activated carbon. And in that, we use far less energy as well. So we did a study for a fairly substantial mine where we were able to show thousands of tons worth of reduced CO2 emissions just from a reduction in the amount of of diesel fuel that was required to generate electricity for a plant for activated carbon versus our plant. And so that was very good. So the Magnus project is really kind of very interesting for us for two reasons. First, it'll be a full-scale implementation that will happen at the Penalonga gold mine. But also, they've been working fairly closely with the Zimbabwe government to try and move some of the artisanal miners into standard processing areas. And this is really important because in a lot of underdeveloped or developing countries that are doing gold mining, they still use mercury to extract the gold from the earth, when sometimes they're doing it by hand. Well,
without gloves or anything. Just bare hands.
So one of the efforts that Magnus is trying to do there is to create at least 3 regional processing centers using our plants, because they're fairly inexpensive in comparison to activated carbon. And because of the speed of operation, they can then take artisanal miners, bring in their material several tons at a time. But it can be processed very quickly through our system. Then the system gets to be zeroed, right? Because our beads don't hold on to any of the gold. So that way it's very easy for them to switch over between artisanal miners, bringing in their ore, and make sure that the artisanal miner gets 100% of their gold, or the value of their gold back, minus the processing costs.
That's huge. That's big. I mean, especially if they feel they can trust, bringing it there, and they're not going to get in trouble. Not only is the quality of life. I mean, I've heard of like UN groups that they'll go into artisanal mining, either South Africa or Africa, and they try to teach them, say, listen, don't handle some of this stuff, because they're trying to, you're going to get harmed. And I've talked to people, and they say they know that. They're like, but they don't care, because they're like, I have to deal with like getting food on my plate tomorrow or the next day or 3 days. You're telling me I might get sick in 20 years. I don't care. It's a different way of looking at life. But if you can have a solution here where it's not only you don't have to handle it, but you're going to get a much better yield, then the quality, because often they have to take it to, say, not to get into the whole artisanal world, but they'll take it to someone who can resell it, and they're going to get 25% taken off the top there anyway. So if they can recoup some of that because it is artisanal, it's more money in their pocket.
That's right. And it allows them to focus a little bit more on getting the gold and rather than extracting it. So hopefully this is a win-win for everybody, including the climate and the environment and the people involved. And for that reason, I'm really excited that we're a part of that program. And I hope that it goes forward successfully as quickly as possible.
And now, so your technology, I think it's on page 3 of your deck here, or somewhere around. There is I'm assuming this is the system, the extraction system. So it's a system. It's not like a huge plant, but it's a decent size. This is mobile. You can sell the whole system to someone, or you can lease it, or lease just the beads. Like, maybe walk me through that model of how it works for.
Sure. In gold mining, there's a couple of different ways. So we have done some configuration of entirely mobile plants, and they don't need to be big. This is actually a picture of our affinity system, which is our cannabis system.
Okay, yeah.
So, and it's also, not terribly huge. I don't know, maybe it's a little bit bigger than your dining room table.
Yeah.
But it's fairly simple. The beauty of our technology is that from the complexity is all in our polymer, and that's what all our patents are.
Yes.
But we intentionally designed the polymer to be easy to use in application and scalable. And so, this system here that you're looking at is really just a series of columns that contain our beads, and it's pumps and valves in order to move fluid across the beads. And some of the fluid is loading fluid, some of the fluid is cleaning fluid, and some of the fluid is the fluid that removes the target molecule from our beads. In this case, it's the cannabinoids. And so, and the outputs, of course, either are recycling those materials if we can reuse them again, or they're going to the final product, which just involves solvent recovery. So, that gets you better than a 90% pure distillate. With a single pass across our beads. We're starting to do some work now to see whether we can do multi-pass and even bump that up into the mid to upper 90% purity.
All right.
Which is really great for the medical applications for the cannabinoids.
And all the regions that you're using as well, those are environmentally friendly, and then so there's no problems there. And
No,
what
in
about
fact,
water usage as well? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so in mining, in the mining space particularly, we worry about that. So for us, the good news is that we can work with the cyanide solution, so there's no change there. But we've already also done some studies in connection with one of the crown corporations in Canada that's done some research on green lixiviants, alternatives to cyanide. And we found one that we've been working with that's based on a fully biodegradable with a very small percentage, like 10% of the normal use of cyanide. And we were able to actually show better absorption or recovery of gold out using that combined lixiviant. And then our IXO speeds were 98.6% effective at gathering all of the gold out of that solution and giving it back to them in their doré. So it's a huge green advantage for people that are able to do a mill circuit and don't want to use so much cyanide. But on the back end of it, activated carbon is also relatively difficult or dirty in terms of its use of reagents. As I talked about, it's a complicated process. It takes between 18 and 24 hours to remove all the metals from activated carbon. You have to start with an acid wash, and then you have a high pressure reaction for over 12 hours to remove them, and then you have to do a kiln operation to reactivate the activated carbon. Well, with us, we don't have any of that. We have like a 3-hour process where you just rinse the beads off with water to neutralize them. We use a reusable eluent, so it's a closed loop cycle to get that. And then there's no regeneration process whatsoever afterwards. So it happens very fast. And that's how we can save a lot of money, both in capital expenditures and operating expenses. But because we work at low temperature and no pressure vessels and so quickly, we also create less pollution. And
that's a big factor too for anyone. I mean, it's common whether you like it or not. Everything is going to be accounted for. How much carbon you're putting out. Certainly, a mine is obvious. I mean, it's a big
sure.
a big operation. So this here, we're not only talking just mining. It could be used in fertilizer. You can use it in many different areas. Have you been able to track like what kind of carbon savings? I mean, the carbon market's not very robust just yet, but what kind of savings you're finding so far at the stage you're at? Like, is it significant to a company?
Yeah, so as I said, we did one analysis, which was confirmed by some independent testings for a mine that I think was projecting around 60,000 ounce per year of production. And the CO2 tonnage savings in 1 year from just removing, all we did was calculate it based on removing the regeneration kiln for the activated carbon, was over 1,000 tons per year of reduced CO2 emissions, just for that one portion.
Yeah.
So we have been able to start quantifying that. Of course, it differs for different mines because some mines are on the electric grid, so their carbon footprint for energy usage is different than a remote mine that's generating electricity using diesel fuel.
Yeah.
But as a general sense, the savings still happen, right? You're still burning electricity, which means it was produced somehow.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Right.
So, and on that topic, I mean, I assume that this polymer as well could be used specifically to lump onto carbon as a carbon sequester itself, if you wanted it to.
We have looked at the use of our stuff for CO2 sequestration.
Yeah.
I think that it's not impossible, but it's not something that we've concentrated on.
Okay, yeah.
And we do know of some activities in carbon recovery and conversion that are going on. So we're going to follow that space carefully and see where it starts to mature and whether there really is a significant hole in that process that we might fill.
Yes.
In the meantime, there are a lot of other elements. We'd all like to see oil and gas go away and not be using those things, but it's going to be a continued product that we have to use for energy as well as plastics and other kinds of things for a long period of time. There are other remediation elements that we can do. So for example, there are oil wells that have mercury in them.
Yes.
And so mercury becomes a major pollutant and element of interest for the oil industry because they can't decommission anything that's used because it's got contamination. Not removing it can cause damage to evaporators and other kinds of things. And so there are applications for our Ixos and metals technology in many different kinds of remediation plays as well. And of course, we know there are historic mines all over the world, especially here in Canada, and all sorts of places where mercury stamp and mercury amalgamation was done. And we have mercury and arsenic left in the tailings, and tailings need to be remediated. There's enough gold in a lot of those that we can actually capture that gold efficiently enough that we can do the remediation at a profit. Rather than it being a Superfund cost for the government or the legacy mining companies. So, as we gain more traction in the next year, and we were, really regaining the traction that we had before COVID, we see a lot more of that activity starting to build up for us. There's all sorts of things that are coming out of the tar sands. There are radioactive materials that come out of some of the shale cracking. And so there are really good target molecules for us. And I think that we'll be successful in that as soon as we have time to address it.
So just because you're mentioning radioactive, I mean, it looks like nuclear might have a bit of a renaissance. Is there anything in that space?
Yeah, we demonstrated years and years ago that we could collect uranium for sure.
All right.
When the Fukushima disaster happened, we identified very quickly that we could probably have created a bead to get the cesium out of their salt water and stuff like that, be able to sequester that permanently onto our polymer, and then the polymer could have been disposed of as the nuclear waste rather than these massive water tanks that they have, which is
that they have to put cement and all that.
So there are lots of those applications. For us being a small company, we're focused on the ones where we know how to get them to market. We've already been paying our tolls and buying our way into the markets. And again, as we start establishing that and have more time to launch, those will definitely be some of the areas that we're looking at. We've even looked at recovery, which we think we'd have no problem with, recovering uranium out of fly ash from coal plants.
Right. See, that's very interesting too. I know fly ash fairly well.
Yeah. So there are lots of minerals in there. Some of them even include rare earths, and those may be good opportunities. Again, here you're taking a waste product from coal mining and gaining more value out of it, or from energy production and gaining more value out of it. So those are also really good areas for us to concentrate in.
And before I jump into, say, kind of the economic model or, kind of revenue streams coming in, maybe we can touch on, because this is a sector we kind of hop, skipped, and jumped over. And you mentioned COVID, was how in healthcare can this be applied? I know you'd focused a lot of attention on COVID and being able for testing. How did that work? And what are some ideas moving forward?
So, back in 2015-16 timeframe, we looked at whether we could do viruses. Everybody was worried about Ebola being on the order of magnitude that COVID was. Fortunately, it was not. But we learned some things about how to do that with a polymer. When COVID hit, we couldn't do most of our mining work, so we said, well, could we do this? In the span of about 14 months, 16 months, 3 months to our first demonstration, we were able to create a molecular imprinted polymer that successfully captures all of the variants that we've tested so far of the COVID virus. In perfecting that polymer, we're now able to get down to 250 times better sensitivity than the immunoassay tests that we're using now, the rapid antigen tests.
Yes.
Almost as good by orders of magnitude as PCR testing. Not only that, we found that we had no false alarms to any other viral or bacterial pathogens that
That's
are
huge.
respiratory borne.
Yes.
Right? So, okay, what does that mean? It means there would be the only self-help, self-take test, the only lateral flow test that was able to actually detect asymptomatic but contagious people,
Yes.
because none of the other tests do that. Okay?
That in itself is huge. Yeah.
So we're at the point where we're ready to start productizing it and taking the polymer now into final format. We have a partner in Edmonton who's willing to do the clinical trials for us. And in fact, if we pass the clinical trials, he can actually start going to market with that test under his license, because he's a licensed clinical test house.
Okay. Yep.
And that would be sufficient for our submissions then to Health Canada. While we're waiting for that, we'd have some revenue generating opportunities. So that project is ready. We've now demonstrated also that we can do similarly for bacteria. And we focused on E. coli. In that case, I saw you had some slides up there, and I had happy to talk to them, but the market is still huge. COVID's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
We can multiplex this to do COVID and influenza and all sorts of other things.
All sorts of ones. And I was just going to ask you, do you get to jump ahead still with COVID into the clinical trials where it's not like you're like phase one, you're leapfrogging, that still is open. Yeah. So it's not like we're waiting 4 years to, it's a hyper processed.
It still is. It still is. And for these tests, there are a lot of them that have been approved already. So it's going to be efficacy testing and making sure that our results are, in fact, our results across the clinical trials. But because our detection and cross-reactivity data are so good, this really shouldn't fall under any major delays. And because there's a large swath of producers for the starting materials for lateral flow tests, we don't expect there to be manufacturing issues and qualifications of the manufacturers either.
So you're focused on that, but where can that go? Just because I remember speaking to you, and it's like, it really clicked in, like beyond COVID, like the blue sky of, hold on, wait a second, that just this scaled alone, never mind the other, pillars.
So, when we started with the virus stuff, we wanted to make a general platform. So we'd have a process and a platform where the next thing comes up. How long does it take? We don't want to wait anymore for an emergent viral threat. We got monkeypox going on, right? What about that one?
Yeah.
Well, what we have is the ability now to go very rapidly from definition of a new virus to our test. We don't have to worry about some of the issues with immunoassay tests, right? So the first thing you need to do is you need to identify the virus. You need to identify what it does to the human body. You need to figure out, this is the antibody response that the body gets. These are the best antibodies against it. Is it T cells? Is it really antibodies? What is that? And then you have to figure out how to selectively grow those things in order to start making tests.
Yeah.
Well, all I need is the virus, and I imprint for the virus, and I'm done. I don't care about what the immune system's response is to the virus. So I don't have to wait to go through all of those processes in order to be moving straight into production of a new test. So blue sky for this is, we start multiplexing. First thing that people are really going to want to know is, do I have the flu or do I have COVID? Why? Because the interventions are different.
Yes.
Then the next thing is, do I have the flu or a virus, or do I have a bacteria? Because if it's a bacterial infection, then you're going to be treating it with antibiotics. And if we can identify what bacteria it is, then we know even better what antibiotic to give. And right now, the options at even the clinical level for a doctor's office to be testing is very bifurcated. So what are they going to do? They're going to give you a COVID test and you test negative for that. Then they're going to give you an influenza test and you test positive for that.
Yeah.
We can start multiplexing this very simply using our technology to be able to give them sort of a laboratory on a chip, if you will.
That's really cool.
And so the ability to deploy is very simple. And the process to get into manufacturing is simple. And once I've created my masters, I don't need the virus anymore to create more products. So I'm not stuck in manufacturing techniques that require me to deal with biological material, which is very sensitive to light and heat and other kinds of things, which can degrade or negatively affect amino acid tests. So these are other major advantages there. So blue sky, look, we can do biomarkers. Why aren't we testing hormone levels? So think about a blood glucose test, but it tests for traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
So now your kids at the soccer game, they collide heads while they're trying to, hit the ball, and somebody falls down. Do they have a concussion or don't they? Well, the body starts producing biomarkers almost immediately to that kind of trauma. Why shouldn't we just be doing something simple to test right there on the sidelines immediately? Then we know what the proper interventions are. We can even, depending on the biomarkers, tell something about the type of head injury, and then treatment can be offered. We don't have to question this anymore.
Now, someone goes, okay, the fact that we can even think about doing this is going to blow a lot of people's minds away. They're going to be like, this is incredible. Now, it would be, it's like,
focus, John, right?
Well, no, but it's like, why, like, okay, why aren't we doing it? But it's like, is this economic though? They go, oh my God, this is probably going to cost a fortune. It'll only be for private healthcare. It's going to be, and this is rapid testing as well. Like, this isn't like send it away for a week and come back.
No, this is rapid testing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, first of all, the polymer itself costs very little. After you get into manufacturing, we're talking about needing a little piece of polymer that's maybe, less than a centimeter squared.
Yeah.
Maybe it's only a few millimeters squared, and that's enough for us to do the detections that we need. So like in the bacteria and viruses, we only need like 1,000 viruses or 1,000 bacteria for us to get a detection signal. The other thing is we have multiple formats that we can make a reusable sensor.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things we've been doing is implementing this so that we get an electronic detection, and we have a couple of ways that we do that. Well, as long as the sensor doesn't go off and there's no detection, you can keep using that. We can even wash the sensor off or autoclave it to make it pristine if we needed to. So you can think about this and go in many directions with that. So it's very inexpensive. We looked at and have designs for example, for a breathalyzer. Okay, just a little thing the size of your cell phone, but you breathe into it. And you breathe into it for 15 seconds, and 30 seconds later, I can give you a plus minus for a whole bunch of pathogens. Okay, it's got a little replaceable cartridge in it. So how many trials do I get? Well, if it was COVID, let's say I design it so that you get, 25 tests out of it. All right, and it costs $10 for a cartridge. Now your average test cost is $0.25.
Yes.
You can make a decision. A business can make a decision about giving these things away to their employees if there's an outbreak. Just test yourself for 25 cents in the morning before you come to work.
Yeah.
Same thing with school children. Same thing with people getting on an airplane or getting on a cruise ship or anywhere else.
Yeah.
If you can bring the per unit test cost down, you can make it. There are barriers to that with immunoassay tests. And they result because you have to grow animals, you have to sacrifice animals and get antibodies, then you have to store and ship them specially, and then you have to handle everything specially from there. And so those kinds of technologies just don't have a convenient way to get down to those kinds of test levels. Polymer does.
Okay, you know what? I could go on and talk about this for a couple hours without any hesitation. And I don't want to do that to other people. So, and I find this stuff fascinating. But so in any event, I think people are going to be very curious and go, this is very cool. Like all that's happening here. And let's just, quickly just jump and just leave that to go. Yeah, we're in a down market. It's pretty tight. Getting this story out. What does it take for you guys? You've hit some obstacles like everyone else in the market. What is the obstacles to getting a lot of revenue coming in? Have you been talking to some of these companies saying we have this, it's tested, it's this, it's that? Where is that along the path? Because you've got a whole bunch of innovation, a whole bunch of proof of not only proof of concept, but proof of work. Where are we now with making this a revenue stream?
Yeah, so on the mining side, in the Ixos product line, of course, we just had the big announcement of a big contract, and that's going to start kicking in very shortly. And I would suspect we'll be in the larger revenue generating portions of it come first quarter of next year after the initial testing is done and we start getting into the detailed design work for the Penalonga project as the starting project. So there'll be a lot more testing and design stuff there. So that's when I see that one coming online. Toward the end of the year, or possibly to the beginning of the year, we have another major mining contract that will be coming online. Unfortunately, I'm bound by NDA and I can't talk about it, but that's going to be getting us into some of the other critical battery metals. As you know, we're working on a lithium project here in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. And the test data for that is just starting to come in, and so we're hoping that as we get more down the line of defining the flow sheet and the economic value of that for the mine, that there'll be more money to come and take that.
Is this a brine? Is this a type of brine one? Is this a
no? This is actually a hard rock mine.
Hard rock. Very cool. All right.
And there are other really large deposits here in Canada. Quebec has some very large deposits of pegmatite, spodumene deposits with high lithium values.
100%.
So what we're trying to do is prove that we have a environmentally friendly and economically friendly method for getting that to lithium carbonate, lithium hydroxide, battery quality without having to send it to Asia.
That's very cool. Yeah,
and, so we're hoping to bring that to Canada quickly. So so that's that side. We penned a deal that should close here in October. We've licensed the Affinity cannabis stuff to a company over on Prince Edward Island, and we're in the process now of transitioning all of that stuff over to them. Their folks are actually out selling Affinity systems as well as their other gear for extraction at a show in Greece right now. We'll be participating in some others. We have sales and we'll have deliveries of Affinity equipment through 2023.
All right.
So that licensing deal gets us a chunk of cash in October, plus a 12% interest in AESI, so an equity interest in our partners there, and then a continuing royalty on the revenue generation for every Affinity machine. So we're expecting that to be several $1 million next year in revenue there as well.
Yeah.
And then on the this is even old now.
Okay, this is
So and then but the Affinity numbers look pretty good. The Ixos numbers may be a little bit low. And then on AMIPS, we are dealing with one organization that's looking to license our AMIPS actually for some food spoilage applications. So we have two technologies there. One is our pathogenic amine detection system, and the other, of course, is detection of E. coli, and then we can expand that to Listeria and other things. And as we all know, E. coli has been in the news many times associated with recalls of different kinds of food items. And E. coli is also implicated in food spoilage, meat spoilage, and that kind of stuff. So we'll be licensing that application out. I hope to have a term sheet in just the next few weeks that we can start negotiating specifically against. And then we're looking for other licensees in the personal use space or the human use space. That's how we're going to have to go. The markets are bad, so we'll find some non-dilutive ways to fund ourselves. And yes, unfortunately, even in down markets, we're going to need to raise some capital. And so we do have an open raise going on right now.
Okay, and there's good and bad with that. Sure, I mean, no one likes to raise in a bad market. It's tough, but this is different than a lot of other stories where it's. I look at say mining just in general because we deal with a lot of mining companies, and the exploration side is just R&D. It's like, well, we might hit, we may not, and now people are used to that, and it's we didn't hit. So, you go and you issue more shares. This is different. You have this is a real business. This isn't the R&D phase anymore. It may have been 5 years ago or 3 years ago. You've got product lines. You're selling product lines. There's revenue coming in. But it's just the timing is a lot tougher.
It's a lot tougher. Yeah.
A lot tougher.
COVID, and COVID put us back 2.5 years from where we were in mining because we couldn't go to the mines.
Yes, you can't. Yes, you can't go to site. You can't travel. And at least with this year, because even say, well, we're heading into a recession, it looks dismal for 6 months, a year, however long, is that you've got a product that's an efficiency factor. So for even someone going and saying, well, we're not going to do a ton of production, you go, but still, you're still producing, we can save you money. This isn't a net loss of just another marketing piece or anything. This is something where even a company at smaller or bigger scale, it's just efficient. And they might be more interested in going, ooh, okay, hold on. Let's focus more on efficiently on a smaller batch because we're not going to produce as much. That might be alluring to a lot of companies, even in very, very tough and tight markets.
You're absolutely right. And, the good news is that the gold is still strong. It's likely to continue to be strong. The move toward electric vehicles and other electrified infrastructure is not going to stop because of the recession. In fact, money is being poured into that. And our mining focus is right now on almost every metal that's being used for electric vehicle production, battery production, and those kinds of things. And as we, increase our offerings in there, there'll be more mines coming online and more process centers coming online that are going to need this technology. And frankly, our lithium stuff is going to be great for recycling. And, recycling of lithium batteries and recovery of those critical metals is going to be immensely important going forward, again, as we try and continue to reduce the impact of our technology on the environment and what we can do. So we're excited about how that market's going to span out in the long term. And what? Oh, we're in cannabis. Well, I suppose you could, the cannabis industry in Canada has gone through a lot, mostly because we got into a lot of overproduction, but it's going to be all about making more money and being more profitable. When you can turn around and tell that LP that for the same amount of green plant material that they're growing in their greenhouse or in their field, we're going to give them, for every kilo's worth, we're going to give them, hundreds of extra grams to sell. That's a winning story every time. Every time.
Doesn't matter what business. I mean, it's
right. And the vices don't go away. The vices don't go away with a recession.
None of the vices go away. And even if you're a doom and gloom person, we talk about it all the time, they're not going to do this, the electric future thing, the batteries, the car, it's all happening. And, whether it's lithium alone, even if you just said all we do is lithium and that end of story, I mean, that is such a massive market in of itself. And I want to remind everyone, you've got 6 PhDs working on this. This isn't Andrew saying, hey, I've got a cool idea. That's not this company.
We actually have contracts. We're working for mining companies. We're doing it, guys.
Yeah. So they're doing it. They've got revenue coming in. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We're at founders share prices right now.
So that's kind of my
share price. So.
Yes, that's my point, is that this is like an initial conversation. We're going to love to do a lot more and get real in depth with it. But I wanted people to see that there are real companies doing cutting edge, innovative things that you're getting at founders shares from years ago. And there's lots of companies out there. Yeah, they're down, and they're down at 3-5 cents, but maybe they should be. This is one where it's like the technology, the amount of work put in that you're getting right now is huge. It's immense, and it's real. Once again, this isn't just we're testing something. It might work. It may do this. You're there, and you're in the revenue generating spot. So it's not the best environment, but at the same time, you're already in the revenue generating. You've got contracts coming in. So for someone who's looking and sitting on the sidelines, I think throw it on your screen at the least. Give me a call, give me a shout. We can chat more about it. But this whole space, this is stuff I love talking about, because if you get excited about it, it's going to take a lot of brain power. It's going to take a lot of curiosity, a lot of interest, and maybe then you won't be worried about all the chaos and the stress and everything else. You'll look at, there's people focusing on solutions. Like, this is a huge solution to a lot of different things. You've got the carbon issue, we've got the environmental issue that is cleaning up, and profitability even in tough times. So there's a lot of really good things to get people excited about and focus on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. Well, we look forward to catching up with you again and talking to you about any news that comes out, but also just, this is a topic I think we'll need to talk to people a few times about, just to really get their heads around it. I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions that come in. And I really appreciate you spending the amount of time you did with us because it is a fascinating topic.
My pleasure. I look forward to doing it again with you.
All right. Thank you,
all
Doctor.
for listening. Yeah.
Take care.
Bye-bye.